strange, the things your brain chooses to remember. Not the birthdays or anniversaries, not even the vows. No, I remember the color of the napkins. Dark navy, cloth, folded into those neat little triangles like origami. I remember the smell of the candle burning in the center of the table. Vanilla with something else under it. Maybe clove. I remember the way her hand trembled, just barely, when she picked up the receipt. It was supposed to be a celebratory night. A new restaurant had opened in the heart of downtown Chicago. Some trendy spot with minimal lighting and ridiculous prices. Natalie's firm had helped with the branding, so they were invited to a soft launch party/networking dinner. Partners, clients, and a few lucky spouses. That's how I ended up there, tagging along, smiling politely. I didn't mind. I was used to being the background guy. Natalie was the rising star, the one who made things happen. She'd worked her way up from marketing assistant to regional strategy head in under 5 years. She was sharp, persuasive, composed. She always made an impression. And tonight was no different. She was dazzling. She wore this black dress I'd never seen before. Subtle shimmer, sleeveless, elegant but not overdone. Her hair was up, the way she does it when she's trying to look older than she is. She had that confidence about her, the kind you can't fake. Everyone loved her. Her team, the clients, even the waiter who kept hovering near her side of the table. I was proud of her. I was proud to be her husband. Until the moment everything shifted. The waiter came back toward the end of the evening. Not with dessert, not with a check, but with a folded receipt and a clipboard. He was young, maybe 20, probably new. He looked confused, like he wasn't sure which table it belonged to. But instead of asking, he placed it right in front of Natalie with a nervous smile. "Sorry, ma'am," he said. "This came up with the reservation documents. Housekeeping must have mixed it in with the dinner records." Natalie hesitated. Everyone watched her unfold it. Took maybe half a second for her to see what it was. But in that half second, I saw the change in her eyes. A flicker, shock, then calculation. Like her brain rebooted and chose a strategy before her face could catch up. It was a hotel invoice. Boutique place. Right down the street. I saw the name at the top before she could pull it back. Guest name, Natalie Reed. Below that, occupancy, 2 adults. Room, 402. Nights, 2. There were itemized charges, minibar, valet, in-room breakfast, a spa service. The dates were recent, very recent. From the same week she told me she was working late on client reports. Silence. Heavy, awkward silence. Her coworker to the left shifted in her seat. Someone across the table chuckled uncomfortably. Natalie laughed. "Oh, wow," she said, holding up the receipt like it was a joke. "This is such a mess. I booked this place for a client workshop last month. We canceled, obviously. Looks like they never cleared the system. That's awkward." She laughed again. So did a few others. Her manager gave a dismissive wave like, "Hotels, am I right?" The waiter muttered another apology and took the slip back, retreating quickly to the bar. And just like that, the table moved on. Back to cocktails, project talk, some inside joke about someone in HR who used Comic Sans in a proposal. But I didn't move on. I kept looking at her, watching the way she smoothed her napkin, the way she sipped her wine without looking at me, the way she acted like I hadn't just seen something that didn't fit. She leaned toward me a few minutes later, casual, still smiling. "Don't read into that," she whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. "Seriously, I forgot to cancel the second guest name. It was just a planning hiccup." "Okay." She touched my arm, her fingers light. I nodded, but inside something split. Not a loud break. More like the quiet sound of wood beginning to crack under pressure. You don't realize you're standing on a hollow floor until it creaks beneath you. Here's the thing. I wanted to believe her. I really did. Because believing her meant everything stayed the same. Believing her meant I didn't have to question the last few months. The nights she stayed late at the office. The way she started turning her phone upside down when she left the room. The work trips that seemed longer than usual. The sudden interest in new perfume, expensive shoes, and fancy silk nightwear that never made an appearance at home. It had all been adding up quietly, but I didn't want to put the pieces together. I told myself she was just busy. I told myself I was being paranoid. Until that dinner. That receipt wasn't a piece of paper. It was a spark. And once it was lit, my brain wouldn't stop burning. I barely remember the rest of the night. I nodded when I was supposed to, smiled when people looked my way. But I wasn't there. Not really. I was replaying that moment over and over again. Her reaction, the timing, the wording, the way she didn't meet my eyes when she explained it. I kept asking myself, if it was just a mistake, why did it feel like a lie? Later that night, when we got in the car, I waited for her to say something. Anything. But she didn't. She just checked her lipstick in the mirror and scrolled her phone. The silence between us was louder than any argument we'd ever had. I drove home with my hands locked on the wheel, watching the city lights blur past, trying to convince myself I was overthinking it. That hotel stays get misfiled all the time. That maybe she had meant to cancel and forgot. That there could be another explanation. But deep down I knew. Something was off. Something had been off for a while. And now I couldn't unsee it. After that dinner I didn't sleep much. I laid there beside Natalie, staring up at the ceiling in the dark, her slow breathing next to me, calm and rhythmic, like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just tossed a live grenade onto the middle of our marriage and walked away from the blast. I kept hearing her voice from the restaurant, laughing it off. I forgot to cancel the second guest name. If I hadn't seen the receipt myself, I might have believed her. But I did. I saw it clearly. 2 adults. Room charges, spa dons, valet tips. It wasn't a canceled booking. It was real. It was recent. It was int asterisk mate. And suddenly, everything started making sense. It's funny how the brain works. When you're happy, you overlook things. You fill in gaps with good intentions. But when trust is shaken, you start replaying moments like surveillance footage. You zoom in. You slow it down. You freeze frames you didn't know mattered. And that's what I did for hours. For days. I remembered the first time she disabled location sharing on her phone. It was subtle. Some app was draining my battery, she'd said. I'd shrugged it off, trusting her, because I had no reason not to. But now, that felt like the first layer of distance she put between us. I remembered how she used to text me funny things during the day. Memes, random thoughts, complaints about her coworkers. But for the past 2 months, that stopped. Her phone was always locked, always silent, always face down. I remembered her late nights at the office. The sudden client emergencies. The time she'd come home tired, irritated, showered immediately, and slipped into bed without saying much. I chalked it up to stress. But stress doesn't smell like a different cologne. Stress doesn't hide receipts in jacket pockets or take calls from numbers labeled unknown that she'd excuse herself to answer. Stress doesn't buy $300 dresses and tuck them into the back of the closet like secrets. I even remembered the last time we were int asterisk mate, if you could call it that. It had been polite, mechanical, like checking a box. She used to reach for me in the morning, touch my arm when we passed in the kitchen, rest her head on my shoulder when we watched TV. That version of her had disappeared. The new Natalie was cordial, distant, careful, still playing the role of wife, but with none of the warmth. And the worst part? I hadn't noticed. Not really. Not until that damn hotel bill cracked the illusion. So I started paying attention. The next time she said she had a girls' night, I asked who with. She listed the usual names: Kelly, Miranda, Jess. So I texted Kelly, "Hey, hope you guys have a fun night tonight." Kelly's reply came 2 hours later. "Wait, what night? I haven't seen Nat in like 3 weeks." I stared at the message, my stomach dropping. I waited for Natalie to come home that night. She smelled like wine and some kind of spicy perfume. The heels she wore weren't the ones she normally picked for casual dinners. Her lipstick was fresh. She kissed my cheek on autopilot and went upstairs. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Instead, I checked our bank statement the next morning. There it was, dinner for 2 at a restaurant across town. A romantic one. Candlelit tables. No group menu. Not the kind of place you go for a girl's night. The charge was time-stamped exactly when she texted me. Still with the girls. Might crash at Miranda's. And that's when the silence between us shifted. It wasn't just distance anymore, it was deception. I didn't confront her. I wasn't ready. I needed more. Not just for proof, but for myself. I needed to know I wasn't imagining things. So I started documenting. Quietly. Methodically. I took photos of receipts, copied down timestamps, and noted which nights she claimed to be at work or with friends. I checked her calendar. Oddly blank most of the time, even though she claimed to be slammed with meetings. I went back through old text threads. There were entire weeks where she'd text like a roommate, not a partner. No warmth, no check-ins. Just logistics, milk, dry cleaning, dinner reservations. Meanwhile, she was dressing differently. Subtly. New jewelry. A different shade of lipstick. Hair done in styles I hadn't seen before. Sometimes I'd compliment her, and she'd smile politely, say thanks, then go back to scrolling her phone. It was like I'd been replaced by a cardboard cutout version of myself, present but irrelevant. She'd become a master of avoidance. If I asked too many questions, she'd flip it around. "You're being paranoid," she said once, when I asked why she came home late without texting. "Can't I have a life outside this house?" "Of course," I said. "I just want to be part of it." She didn't respond, just walked upstairs. One day, I found a small, crumpled note in the laundry, tucked into the pocket of a blazer I hadn't seen before. It was from a dry cleaner on the other side of the city, addressed to someone named Brian. But it was her blazer. I didn't understand. Not fully. But I remembered the name. Later that week, I checked our shared cloud folder, the one we both used to store receipts and travel docs. She must have forgotten it was still synced. And there, buried in a folder labeled Q3 Travel Docs, was a hotel confirmation for a stay in New York, booked under her name. 2 guests, 3 nights, 1 king bed, and the contact number listed on the reservation? Brian. I couldn't breathe for a minute. I just sat there staring at the screen, blinking like the pixels might rearrange themselves. But they didn't. They never do. I started to wonder how long this had been going on. 6 weeks? 3 months? Longer? Had it started with flirtation at work? Or was this someone she met traveling? Was I the fool she came home to while she lived a second life somewhere else? The realization hit me like a wave. I didn't know my wife anymore. I wasn't even sure she was my wife, not in any way that mattered. What I did know was this: the lies weren't clumsy. They weren't accidental. They were structured, layered, rehearsed. This wasn't a mistake. This was a system. And suddenly I stopped asking why. I stopped wondering what I had done wrong. Because deep down, I knew it wasn't about me anymore. This was about her. Her choices. Her secrets. Her double life. And the next time she slipped up, even just a little, I would be ready. Because from now on, I wasn't going to overlook anything. I'd overlooked enough. It happened on a Tuesday night. Nothing special about it. No big fight, no anniversary. Just a regular evening in a house that didn't feel like a home anymore. Natalie had gone to bed early. Or at least that's what she said she was doing. She'd been exhausted from back-to-back meetings. She mumbled a quick goodnight, kissed me on the cheek out of habit, and disappeared upstairs. I stayed in the living room, the TV flickering soundlessly, my mind buzzing like a faulty neon sign. For weeks, I'd been documenting. Receipts, bank statements, odd gaps in her calendar, the carefully crafted alibis, the name Brian that kept appearing like an echo in the corners of her life. All of it added up, but I still didn't have the smoking G***N. Until that night. She left her phone downstairs. That was unusual. Natalie never left her phone anywhere. It was like an extra limb. But tonight, it sat face down on the end table, screen dark. For a long moment, I just stared at it. I told myself not to, that looking at her phone would make me the bad guy, that I had no right. But then it lit up. A preview of a message appeared on the lock screen, glowing in the dim light. Brian, yesterday was better than New York. The room is ready in the morning. Red heart. My heart stopped. Right below it, another bubble. Her reply, counting the minutes. The words blurred. My ears rang. My hands went cold. This was it. Not hints. Not suspicions. Not circumstantial evidence. This was confirmation. This was the truth, raw and undeniable, sitting right there on a glowing rectangle of glass. I picked up the phone, my hands trembling. It was unlocked. She must have thought I'd never dare. Her messages with Brian were pinned at the top. I scrolled. There were weeks of conversation, months, dozens of messages, little snapsh asterisk ts of a life she'd been living behind my back. Photos of wine glasses clinking in hotel rooms. Selfies of her in dresses I'd never seen. Him complimenting her. Her telling him she couldn't wait to see him again. Inside jokes, pet names, and references to me. Mark's clueless. One message read, "He thinks I'm at a work dinner." Another, "He's so trusting, it's almost sad." I felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart until it cracked. I kept scrolling, even though every word felt like a blade. They talked about cities, about hotels, about how risky it was, about how exciting, about me, the dull, reliable man who paid the bills while she snuck off to boutique hotels with Brian. The text that undid me wasn't even S**Zool. It was simple, ordinary, but devastating. "I love how you look at me like I'm the only person in the room." And her reply, "You are." I set the phone down on the coffee table, my fingers numb. For a moment, I just sat there in the glow of the screen, staring at the person I thought I knew, realizing she didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never had. I wanted to storm upstairs, to wake her up, to confront her with the evidence in my hands. But I didn't. Not yet. I needed air. I slipped on my shoes, walked out onto the porch, and sat there in the dark, listening to the hum of traffic a few blocks away. The cool night air hit me like a slap, but it wasn't enough to clear the fog in my head. I'd suspected, I'd documented, but seeing it spelled out, seeing her words to him, her life with him, was different. It was like stepping off a cliff you'd been inching toward for months, only to realize the drop was deeper than you imagined. I don't know how long I sat there. 10 minutes. An hour. Time stopped meaning anything. When I finally went back inside, I didn't look at her. I didn't even go upstairs. I stayed in the living room, staring at the phone, scrolling through more messages, piecing together timelines. It was all there. Hotel bookings, flight confirmations, snapsh asterisk ts of dinners, selfies of her wearing jewelry I'd never seen. She'd even saved a contact card for him under a fake business name, Brian Consulting. Cute. The thing that struck me most wasn't just the cheating. It was the planning, the structure, the way she'd built a whole second life, complete with travel itineraries and cover stories. This wasn't a mistake. This was a lifestyle, and it made me question everything. Every trip she'd ever taken, every late night at the office, every story about clients and girls' nights. How much of it had been real? How much of our marriage had been real? I opened her email app. She was still logged in. There were forwarded confirmations from hotels, meeting agendas that were actually itineraries for trips with him. One was for the boutique hotel just a few blocks from that dinner. The same hotel from the receipt. The dates lined up perfectly with her so-called client strategy retreat. The evidence was overwhelming, ironclad, inescapable. And yet, when I finally looked at her sleeping upstairs, curled under the blanket like nothing had changed, part of me wanted to shake her awake and demand an explanation. Part of me wanted to believe there was one. Some twist, some misunderstanding, some thread I could pull that would unravel all of this and reveal something innocent underneath. But there wasn't. The innocence was gone. In its place was a woman I didn't recognize. A woman who could smile at me over dinner, hold my hand in front of her colleagues, and then text another man minutes later about how she couldn't wait to see him in the morning. I went back downstairs, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the phone until the screen went dark. My hands stopped shaking. My heart slowed down. And in that stillness, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just a suspicious husband anymore. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't imagining things. I had proof. Direct, undeniable proof. And with it came a strange clarity. Coldness. Like stepping into a room full of light after fumbling in the dark. I knew what I had to do. The night I found those messages, something inside me hardened. Not anger exactly, not yet. More like steel being forged. Cold, deliberate. I stayed awake until dawn, sitting at the kitchen table with her phone, my laptop, and a stack of receipts I'd been quietly collecting for weeks. The screen glow painted everything in that pale blue light that makes the world feel like a crime scene. I told myself, don't confront. Not yet. Gather. Organize. Understand. So that's what I did. I started with the texts. I ****ed everything. Every message. Every photo. Every timestamp. Messages from Brian that went back months. Her replies, flirtatious and excited, full of the kind of energy she hadn't shown me in years. I created folders on my laptop, labeling them by date and location. Each folder grew like a tumor. Then I moved to her email. She hadn't logged out, probably because she thought she'd never need to. I searched for hotel, flight, reservation, confirmation. The results were endless. Boutique hotels, airlines, spa packages, restaurants, cities I hadn't even known she'd visited. One email was a travel receipt for a work trip to Dallas last April. 2 guests, King Suite, Brian's name listed as conference partner. Another was a string of emails about a leadership retreat in New York, the one he referenced in that text. Better than New York. It wasn't a retreat. It was a 3-night stay at a luxury hotel with rooftop dining. As I pieced it together, a picture formed. Not a blurry suspicion, but a sharp, detailed portrait of a double life. This wasn't an affair built on impulse. It was scheduled, budgeted, coordinated. She'd been living it like a second job. And then I found the photos. They were tucked away in a hidden folder inside her cloud drive. Nothing explicit, thank God. But enough. Pictures of her and Brian at restaurants, leaning across tables, smiling. At airports, in hotel lobbies, at a wine tasting in Napa, at a rooftop bar in Miami. Little ****ts of a life I hadn't even known existed. She was glowing in them, radiant, laughing in ways she no longer laughed with me. Some had captions. Us red heart, one red. Another, finally ours. A third, wish I could stay forever. I sat there staring at the screen, my stomach hollow. It wasn't just betrayal. It was erasure. She'd rewritten herself, built a new narrative where I was nothing more than a footnote. And there it was, proof she'd talked about me too. In one email to Brian she wrote, "Mark's so busy he doesn't notice anything. He's just comfortable. I feel like a different person with you." Comfortable. That word stung worse than any insult. As if loyalty, as if building a life together, as if trusting her had turned me into wallpaper. I didn't cry. I thought I might, but the tears never came. Instead, I felt this strange calm, like my body knew it couldn't afford to feel yet. I copied everything to a flash drive, then printed it all out. Texts, emails, photos, receipts. I hole-punched the papers and slid them into a binder. Page after page, like building a case file. By the time the sun rose, I had a dossier. Neat, organized, chronological. Every trip, every dinner, every lie. I looked at it sitting there on the table, the evidence of my life imploding condensed into one tidy folder. Felt surreal. A part of me wanted to wake her up right then, slam it down in front of her, demand she explain every page. But another part of me, the part that had been humiliated at that dinner, the part that had smiled politely while she played me for a fool, wanted to wait, to be strategic, to choose my moment instead of letting her control it. I poured myself a cup of coffee and watched her come downstairs around 7:30. Her hair tousled, still sleepy. She smiled faintly, asked if I'd been up all night working. She didn't even glance at the binder sitting on the counter. She had no idea. When she left for work, I opened her laptop again. There were more messages. Calendars hidden under fake project names. Expense reports filed to her company that matched dates she'd spent with Brian. Even a shared folder between them with hotel PDFs and itineraries. One of the documents was labeled December Plan. It listed flights, restaurants, and a boutique hotel in Chicago, the same one where that rogue receipt had surfaced. They were scheduled to be there this weekend. 2 nights. Brian plus Natalie, it said at the top. I closed the laptop slowly. My hands were steady now. The shock was over. This was strategy. For the next few hours, I built timelines. I matched her claims of girls' nights to the receipts. Late meetings to flight confirmations. Client dinners to romantic restaurants. It was almost elegant, the way her lies lined up like puzzle pieces. Elegant but cruel. The most painful discovery wasn't a single photo or text. It was the pattern itself. The realization that for months, maybe longer, she had looked me in the eyes, kissed me goodbye, and walked straight into another man's arms. That she had laughed about it with him. That she had called me comfortable, while saving her passion for someone else. By noon, the binder was full. The flash drive was labeled. The evidence was airtight. And me? I wasn't angry anymore. Not exactly. I felt detached. Like I was floating outside of my own life, watching a story play out that I'd somehow wandered into by mistake. She texted me around 12:30. Lunch break. How's your day? I stared at the message, at the cheery emoji she added. I didn't reply. Instead, I set the phone down, took a deep breath, and looked at the binder one more time. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't a hunch. This was a hidden life, fully exposed. I had everything I needed. All that was left was the moment. The moment when she would walk into a house that was no longer hers. The moment when the narrative she'd built would collapse under the weight of the truth. The moment when I would stop being the blind husband and start being the man who knew exactly what had been done to him. That moment was coming. And for the first time in months, I felt ready. I didn't plan a dramatic confrontation. No yelling. No screaming. That wasn't who I was, not before, not now. I just wanted the truth to land where it needed to, heavy and undeniable. I wanted her to see that I knew, that I wasn't asleep anymore. That night, Natalie came home around 6:45. She texted me before pulling into the driveway. Hey babe, traffic was crazy. Home in 5. Want takeout? Could have been any other Tuesday. But I wasn't the same man she left behind that morning. I was in the living room, binder closed, phone face down, everything ready. The TV was on, muted. I wasn't watching it. I just needed something to fill the silence. When she walked in, she called out like always. Mark? You home? I didn't answer right away. Just waited. Let the air carry the weight of everything unspoken. She stepped into the room, setting her purse on the counter like she hadn't shattered our life. Like she wasn't hiding months of betrayal in the fold of every half-smile. She glanced at me, then at the binder on the coffee table. Her body tensed, but only slightly, like a deer that hasn't quite decided whether to bolt. What's that? She asked, her tone too light, too breezy. I didn't move. You tell me. She walked slowly toward it, eyes scanning the closed cover. No label, no title, just a plain, black binder, fat with printed paper and truth. She opened it. Page 1. A screech *T of Brian's text. Yesterday was better than New York. The room is ready in the morning. Below it, her reply. Counting the minutes. She flipped the page. A hotel receipt. 2 guests. Chicago. Last Friday. Next page. A calendar overlay. Her saying she was at a leadership dinner. Next, a photo. Her and Brian, leaning close at a rooftop bar. Time-stamped. Smiling. Her fingers stopped turning. She didn't look up. Her voice, when it came, was faint. You went through my stuff? I let that sit. Let the silence stretch long enough to feel uncomfortable. You made it easy, I said. You left the door open. I walked through. She looked at me then. Really looked. Her face was pale, like she'd just realized the parachute wouldn't open. This isn't what you think, she said. I raised an eyebrow. No? Then help me understand what I'm looking at. I can explain. Please do. But she didn't. She just stood there, blinking, her breath shallow. Her composure broke faster than I expected. Her lips trembled. Her hand covered her mouth. Tears welled up. Not from regret. From exposure. She sat down slowly on the couch, the binder still in her lap. Mark! I didn't move to comfort her. She looked around the room like it might save her. Like the walls might shift and carry her away from this. It just happened, she whispered. I almost laughed. That line. That tired, old line. Really? You just happened to meet a man. Hide his name. Plan out trips. Lie to me. And smile in my face while you slept in his bed. Her face crumpled. The tears came faster now. You don't understand, she said. I was lonely. You've been so distant lately. We barely talked. You were always working. There it was. The pivot. The reversal. The attempt to drag me into her guilt and call it mutual. I leaned forward. Don't do that. Do what? Blame me for what you chose to do. She wiped her cheek. I'm not blaming you. God, Mark, I was drowning. You didn't see me anymore. I stared at her. I saw you. Every single day. I just didn't know I was looking at a stranger. She started to sob. Quiet at first, then louder. Messier. Like it hurt her to be seen for who she was. I let her cry. Not because I felt sorry for her, but because I needed to see her unravel. I needed to see the mask fall. After a minute, she said, I didn't mean for it to get this far. I nodded. But you let it. Again. And again. And again. She didn't deny it. I thought maybe we could fix things, she said, softer now. That I could end it before it got worse. I gestured toward the binder. It's already worse. This is what worse looks like. She clutched the binder like it was a life raft. Please, Mark. I still love you. No, I said. You loved the version of me that didn't know. That's not the same thing. We sat in silence after that. She tried to reach for me. I pulled back. I didn't plan this, she said. I swear. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in months, I wasn't confused. I wasn't doubting myself. I saw her for exactly who she was. You didn't plan to get caught, I said. That's what you mean. She looked down. The tears kept coming. But they meant nothing now. They were a response to consequence, not remorse. I stood up. I want you to stay in the guest room tonight. Her eyes widened. Wait, what? No, please. Don't do this. I'm not doing anything, I said. You did this. She stood, reached for my hand. Just talk to me, please. We can go to therapy. I'll cut it off with him. I'll do whatever it takes. You already did, I said. You made 100 choices before this conversation. You just didn't think you'd have to pay for them. She sobbed harder, arms around herself like she could physically hold herself together. I walked past her toward the stairs. Behind me, her voice cracked. Mark, please, don't go. Just talk to me. I paused, hand on the railing. There's nothing left to talk about. The time for that passed with every lie you told. I didn't wait for a reply. I went upstairs, closed the door, and leaned against it as the sound of her crying filtered through the floor. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't break. I just stood there, in the quiet, feeling the end settle in like dust. This wasn't the end I'd imagined for us. But it was the one she chose. And for once, I wasn't chasing her to explain it. I shut off my emotions and focused on facts. I gathered every message, receipt, calendar entry, and photo, organizing them into a digital archive. I reviewed timelines, cross-checked excuses, and made backups. This wasn't about revenge, it was about clarity. I stopped being the betrayed husband and became the analyst. Each piece of evidence built a wall between us, one I knew she couldn't climb back over. By morning, the proof sat on the kitchen table. She saw the binder, and the lie drained from her face. There were no more stories to spin. I told her calmly, this marriage is over. No shouting, no bargaining, just the quiet weight of reality. She cried, begged, but I'd already stepped away emotionally. That night, I called a lawyer. She broke us at that dinner. She buried us with every message since. Now I was done.